Welcome back to another edition of my confidence picks that I have for all the Power 4 teams going into Week 7. Previewing last week, what we have standings through last week only started in Week 3. Last week is not a good week for the SEC and the Big 12. Both had really monumental Vegas upsets. Alabama, Tennessee, TCU was a huge favorite over Houston. They lost. Just was not a good week for most bettors. Vegas made a lot of money last week, but still, we're in the positive territory for at least the 3 of the conferences. Big 12 is basically even right now. We're only plus 48, 18 and 17 overall. But ACC and Big 10 we're still doing really well, so hopefully we'll do better this week in Week 6. We'll start out with the Big 12. We only have 5 conference games this week. My most confident pick, these are all going to be basically games that are within 7 points. So this is very, very tough this week. I'm thinking Kansas State over Colorado. I do think Colorado will cover the spread, but it's just hard for me to pick against Kansas State. Colorado, if they're ever going to prove to the world that they're a true contender in anything, this is the game to do it. But I don't think they get it done. I think K-State's just a better team than Colorado. Number 4, UCF over Cincinnati. How bad UCF has looked the last 2 weeks, I don't think they lose 3 in a row, especially to the bottom dweller Cincinnati, the Big 12. This game's only 3.5 point spread. I think UCF finally gets back on the winning streak, or winning ways, and they beat Cincinnati Bearcats to move to 4-2. Number 3, BYU over Arizona. Another game that's really close. I think it's only 5.5 point spread. I think Arizona covers in this one, but I think BYU continues their undefeated season. They've covered the spread in every single game so far this year. They're 5-0. But I think they move to 6-0 either way, straight up in this one. Number 2, Utah over Arizona State. Arizona State's hosting Utah on a Friday night. They're only a 4-point favorite. The Utes are. This is a tough one, but I just got to take the Utes over Arizona State. Yeah, they're 4-1. They're a surprise team in the Big 12. I just can't see them upsetting Utah, especially the best team in the Big 12, in my opinion. Finally, West Virginia. I'm going to take them with a big upset over Iowa State. All the analytics show that West Virginia does better against the spread, and I think they're going to get a home victory over the undefeated Big 12 leader, Iowa State, this early on in the season, and take the control and be 3-0 in the Big 12 moving forward. Going on to the Big 10 here, we only have 7 games. My most confident pick of the week, Illinois over Purdue. I think it's 21 points. I mean, Illinois they had a loss against Penn State, but they played a pretty easy schedule, and Purdue is basically the worst team in the Big 10, so I think Illini are going to easily win over the Boilermakers. Number 6, Maryland over Northwestern. Maryland's not a good team. Northwestern's just worse. That's why I'm going to take them as one of the most confident this week in the Big 10. Number 5, Minnesota over UCLA. Speaking of bad teams, UCLA is now 1-4. Very bad start to their Big 10 season, their Big 10 life, career, whatever you want to call it. Minnesota had a big upset against USC. I do not think they have a letdown. Even on the road, I think the Golden Gophers beat UCLA, even as only a 4-point favorite in this one. Number 4, Rutgers over Wisconsin. 2.5 point favorite, the Scarlet Knights are. Wisconsin's always a tough out, no matter who they're playing. But I think Rutgers, they're just a better team overall this year, just a better vibe. And I think Shiano's got them going in the right direction. I think they beat Wisconsin at home, moved to 5-1 on the season. Number 3, Penn State over USC. Another East Coast team traveling all the way out west. Penn State only a 5-point favorite over Southern Cal, who's now lost 2 in a row. They had that huge upset loss against Minnesota the previous week. This is a very big trap game for Penn State. This would have been a big game, period, but a trap game now that USC is unranked and hungry for another win. It'd be very difficult for me to say USC loses 3 in a row, but Penn State, I think, is just a better team, even going out west on the road. First time playing in Southern Cal, I think they win. Number 2, Iowa over Washington. Another team that had a big win last week, Washington, now goes on the road to Iowa, who had a very bad loss to Ohio State. So, both coming off completely different endings to their weeks. I think Iowa is going to get it done. I think they're going to pound the rock against Washington, something Michigan could not do and establish very well. Washington could probably load the box, but they at least have a decent, competent quarterback for the whole game that Michigan did not have for at least a half. I think Hawkeyes get it done over Washington. Number 1, the big game of the year. I'm going to take Oregon over Ohio State. Massive upset. Only 3.5 point spread, but I think Oregon not only covers the 3.5 point underdog spread, they win the game outright against the Buckeyes. This is the Buckeyes' first true test. Oregon, at least they played a really good Boise State team. Otherwise, Ohio State has played mediocre Iowa. That's probably their toughest opponent so far. So, first true test of these 2 elite teams in the Big 10. Who gets the edge, going forward the rest of the season? I think the Ducks do. The first matchup with Ohio State. Going to the ACC now, only 6 games. Number 6, Notre Dame over Stanford. I'm really going to get into this. Stanford's not a good team. Notre Dame is a much better team. They're 22-point favorites. Not much else to say. They're just going to stomp over the Cardinal, I do believe. Number 5, another team, Clemson, is going to beat Wake Forest. They're going to stomp on Wake Forest. They lost Louisiana a couple weeks ago. Clemson's one of the hottest teams in the country. Clay Klubnik is playing really well. Not much else to say. I think Clemson's going to freaking stomp them into a mud hole. Number 4, Louisville over Virginia. I think Louisville recovers, gets out of their losing ways. They lost 2 in a row. I mean, both the Notre Dame and SMU, both really good teams. And Virginia right now is tied for the ACC lead at 2-0. I mean, it's the lead, but it's only 2 games. And I think Louisville gets back on track against Virginia. Both teams get the 4-2. Louisville gets back in their winning ways. Number 3, Georgia Tech over UNC. Only a 4-point spread, but Georgia Tech's on the road. I think Georgia Tech really surprised people that week 1 against Florida State, and they've been really high rated analytically the whole season. They had that weird loss against Syracuse, and they beat Duke last week. I think they beat Duke's biggest rival, UNC, again in consecutive weeks. Number 2, NC State over Syracuse. This is basically a toss-up game. NC State's a 3-point dog, but they're the home team, and we're taking over the Cuse. They haven't really showed much since that win over Georgia Tech, Syracuse, I mean. So I think NC State does not go to a losing record at 3-4. They beat Syracuse, get the 4-3. And number 1, Pittsburgh over California. Pittsburgh, a shocking undefeated leader in the ACC right now over California, who should have beaten Miami last week, but just couldn't pull it out at the end. I think Pittsburgh, even as a 3.5-point favorite at home, I think they still barely get the win. They'll move to 6-0 over the Golden Bears. Finally, going into the SEC, we have 7 games this week. Hopefully, we'll get a little better this week. We only got 2 of the 6 last week. Most confident pick, I mean, Missouri. It's UMass. I mean, you couldn't have a worse team in college football right now. They've lost to so many FCS teams over the years. No way Missouri loses this one to Massachusetts. Another big conference game. I mean, these 2 could have been number 7A and 7B. But Georgia over Mississippi State. There's 34-point favorites. No chance Georgia even comes close. I mean, Mississippi State might cover the spread. I don't think this game's even closer than 24 points. Number 5, Alabama over South Carolina. I said last week, if Alabama would have lost, I'd go streaking in my neighborhood for at least a minute. I got to see what happens with this. I'm going to have to do it. I'll have to see what happens this week. If they lose again, you guys will have to put in the comments below. If Alabama loses again, I will let you guys pick in the comments, whoever gets the most likes, what I would have to do if Alabama loses again. Because this would have been the craziest 2 weeks in the history of Alabama football, and it would not be a good look for Kalen DeBoer coming right off, Coach Saban's dynasty. I think they get it done against South Carolina. They cover the 21 points at home. Number 4, Tennessee over Florida. I really don't know what else to say. I think another team that's coming off a huge upset loss. They're going to get back on track against a mid-SEC team. Tennessee's going to beat Florida. Florida's not a good team. They beat UCF last week, but UCF is not a good team either. Number 3, Texas over Oklahoma. First edition, SEC edition of the Red River Shootout. Even though Texas is a 14.5-point favorite, I think they win and cover the spread. Oklahoma's kind of escaped in a couple of these games early. Texas has just destroyed everybody so far. Even though this is a rivalry game and most time it's close, I think Texas covers a 14.5 points against the Sooners. Number 2, Ole Miss over LSU, another tough game. Ole Miss is going on the road at night against LSU. Always a very, very difficult environment to play in, but I think the Rebels get it done over LSU. I think it's within 3 points. I think the spread's 3.5 for Ole Miss. I think it's within 3 points, but Ole Miss inevitably gets it done. Number 1, Kentucky over Vandy. Vandy had that big win last week, but they're now 13.5-point underdogs to Kentucky on the road. I have no idea which way this is going to go. I'm just going to take the favorite Kentucky Wildcats to win this one over Vandy and get the dub. That is my video, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Hit that like button below, subscribe to the channel, and join me for the rest of the weekend. Let's hope it's a good week in college football. Let's get back on track with these picks, and I'll see you guys next week.